Hi, my name is Charlie Fairbairn and I am on the FlutterFlow team for Pro No Coders. And in this tutorial, we're going to be looking about how to connect FlutterFlow to an Azure SQL database. And I'm going to confess that I don't know a great deal about the Azure SQL database, although there are similarities between all SQL databases. So I went out and used a little bit of research and a little bit of AI to construct this document that goes a long way to explain to me how I can explain to you how that can be put into FlutterFlow. And here are the instructions, and fundamentally we're looking for several things. We're looking at a way of authorizing that database so that when we connect to it, we get authorization to be able to access it. And so those instructions are here, and this video should be watched in conjunction with this particular video. And here are some of the things that you need to do. What I was looking for and got was this here, the endpoint, which is that if one was to set up that database correctly, there would be this endpoint, which is a URL. The second thing I was looking for was this part over here, which was the authorization required to access that database. And the third thing that I was looking for was the JSON here and the format that we need to adopt in order to be able to query it. And there are several kinds of queries. We've got obviously the post and get kind, whether we're going to push data to the database or we're going to retrieve data from the database, commonly known as create, read, update, and delete. So we'll need a different API call within FlutterFlow for each of those. But this gave me the instructions as to how to set up FlutterFlow. So let's go across to FlutterFlow and use that information to create an example API. Okay, I'm in FlutterFlow now, and we're going to go to this symbol over here, which is the API calls, and we're going to add a new call, not a group, just straight in there. And we're going to get a blank page like this. Now I'm going to flick between the notes that I made, and although this won't clearly run because I don't have a database to test it, I'm therefore just simply going to be using these examples over here to show where everything goes. So I'm going to copy that URL. Now clearly that URL needs to be specific to the database, but at least we can see where it goes. So that would obviously go here in the call name, and it would need to be adapted. Now I'm going to go back here and we're going to say, okay, in this particular one, we're going to insert some data into the database. This would be an example of a post. So we're going to go back there and change the get into a post. It's going to put data into the database. And then if you have another look at the documentation, it says here we need to do certain kinds of authorization. So this is the bearer and the access token, and we're going to put that in the headers. So let's go back to FlutterFlow, and we're looking at the headers, and we're going to add a header. And let's just go back here and say the type is going to be authorization and set to bearer access token. So authorization, bearer, and the access token. I'm going to put gobbledygook in here because that will be a long piece of code, a long number that is the authorization to provide the security to make the access. And let's just go back to the notes again and see what the next part of the header. Our content type, this needs to be set to application JSON. So let's head across and do that as well. So I'm going to add another header. It's actually filled in. It's so common. It's not filled in. It's giving you the hint there. It's so common that that's what we want to do. Okay, there it is. So we've got those two headers sorted out now. Now in the body over here, this is where we're going to send the JSON. So if we click down there, we're going to tell it that that's what we're going to do. We're going to send JSON. And the JSON that we're going to set is going to go between these two curly brackets. So going back to the notes, there are the two curly brackets. So let's take that query and see if it'll get accepted as is. Let's just press the format button, and if it likes it, it'll not give you an error. So it does accept that. Now, this is where it gets quite fun, because we've got this column 1, column 2, value 1, value 2. At the end of the day, clearly that's got to be replaced with things that you can access from within FlutterFlow. And that's where the variables come in. So on the variables, we're going to add a variable, and well, we might as well just call it column. See if I can get my spelling right. Column 1. I'll explain to you what we can do with this, and the type is going to be, well, let's think about it. That's probably going to be a string, and we're going to add another variable. Let's call that column 2. That's also going to be a string, and we're going to set that to a string as well. So now if we go back to the body, you can see you've got these variables that are available. Now, what does that actually mean? It means that when we save and go out of this, and we're using that call in the middle of the FlutterFlow code on a particular page, we're able to insert the column that we want into that value, and that value there. We can't leave it quite as it is. We've got to delete that column 1, and we've got to drag that into the spot there. And the same for each of these. So I'll just pause it while I put them all in. Okay, so that's what it might look like. Let's just check that the format's going to let us. Yep, it's still letting us do that, which is good news. Now, one thing I had thought is that we probably would want to change my table so that you could say a customer table, you wanted to insert it into that, an invoice table, a medical record table, or whatever. If you wanted to insert, you'd probably make that as a variable too. So let me just do that quickly by way of example. Just going to add another variable, call it table, set it for string value, go back to the body, replace, we've got it over there now, you see replace that. So I'm just going to delete that, and we'll drag that into where it used to be. Okay, and we're going to format that to check that it still likes it, and it does. Now perhaps you spotted my deliberate mistake here. I put the URL, so let's get that out and put it in the right place there. Clearly it was supposed to go in here, but I'm not going to start the video again. It's simply that little mistake. My apology. But we need to, cannot be empty. That's going to call this a insert. Okay. And at that point, I think we can add the call. All right. So it has saved, which is a good sign. So it's called insert, and it'll be down here as insert. It's a post. It's going to provide data to the database. Now, normally speaking, if that URL was in fact functional, which it isn't yet, we'd be able to go and test this over here. We'd be able to put in specific values here. It could be, for instance, that table could be the customer table, and column, no, that wouldn't be the, here. This could be customer, and column 1 could be age. Column 2 could be, well, anything. It could be address, I suppose. And then what we're going to insert into that would be 31 as an age, and the value we would insert would be 12 street. Okay, and then you'd be able to test that API call over there. I'm not even going to bother doing it because this is an HTTP request that's clearly not going to work because it's not been configured correctly. But that would be in principle how you would do it. So we will save that anyway, and it should remember those dummy values there. And you'd hit the test API call, and then you'd be able to see the results there. And the results are going to come back in a JSON format. Oh, if it is a GET. In this particular case, it probably will just come back with a OK 200. It may come back with some other kind of confirmation. But if it does, it's going to come back in JSON, and you're going to be able to see when it comes back, it's going to tell you what it came back with. So we're looking up here, we can have a look at the URL, the headers, the authorization, with that dummy authorization code. The content type, so it's all sorted that out for us. The body is going to be what the query is over here. And the test response, well, there literally is no point in pressing that because it's not going to work. So what we can now do is go over to somewhere in FlutterFlow and see what it looks like from that perspective. I'm just going to create a really quick page. I'm going to add to this 2 form elements. Let's just duplicate that one for the age and one for the address. Okay, so we're going to Control D for duplicate, and then I'm going to add a button, and it's going to look pretty bad. We don't need to worry about that. This is a demo. I just want to show you how the API works. So that's an input form here that's going to be for the age, that's going to be for the address, and that's going to be for the send button. Let me pause while I just get that sorted. Okay, so a really very, very basic form where we're going to insert the age over here, we're going to insert the address over here. The important part is not really that, it's the action that's going to happen when we press that button. And we're going to create an action over here, and we can add an action if it's just one here, or we can open the action editor. I prefer to do it this way. I'm going to add an action, and it's going to be an API call. Backend database, there we go, the API call. And which API call are we going to use? We're going to use the insert down there, and we need at least one action for initial action, must have at least a true or false action. Let's just put one in there since they're asking us to. I can't really get, and let's just put in a snack, show snack bar, and let's just say record inserted age. The value of column 2 is going to be address. Now the value of value 1 is what we're going to put it in. It needs to be got from the form, so that comes from a variable, and that is a widget state variable, and it's the text 1 field here. So that's where it's going to pick it up, which is table, and let's just say that that is patient, since this is a medical record. So if that was the name of the table, it would pick up on the age field in that table, the address field on that table. It would then pick up and insert the records that we've picked up from the text field 1, which is the age field, and the text field 2 was the address field. So the result of that would be that if I put in here 31 and here 87 Cumberland Avenue and pressed insert record, it would trigger the API and that record would be updated. Okay, that pretty much concludes the tutorial. What I'm not sure of is how experienced you are in dealing with the get version of that API call. It's going to return JSON. If you're familiar with any APIs, you would be familiar with that. But if you need additional help on how to then retrieve the JSON data and display that, for instance, in a table or a form, then do give me a shout. But I think the main focus in this particular tutorial was how to structure that API in the first place. So I hope this is a good starter for you, and very good luck.